All right, so today I want to tell you what happened. I had a phone call over the weekend with a big developer in Massachusetts. He went on to send me quotes, and I'm going to share these with you, of the cost of something called the Passive House Standard. These are basically stretch codes in Massachusetts. If you don't know what stretch codes are, I'll give you a high level, a little overview here. Stretch codes are basically a way to keep your property airtight, less carbon footprint, more energy efficient, which I guess could sound good on paper, but the math and the reality of what happens is what I'm going to show you. Now, the reason I wanted to cover this is because not only do I want to tell you that it is extremely expensive to build a house in Massachusetts, not only is it that, but it's extremely hard to buy a house in Massachusetts because of how costly it is to build. Now let's take it a step further. Not only is it costly to build and buy in Massachusetts, lending institutions, and I'm not talking about like cross-country mortgage or guaranteed rate here. I'm talking about groups of investors that are either out of New York, New Jersey, Texas, maybe even some here in Massachusetts. They do not want to reinvest money in Massachusetts, and here's why. Their money is better spent putting it into the stock market than it is investing in real estate projects here in Massachusetts because the rate of return sucks. This is why permitting, and I'm going to show you this too. This is going to be a long video, guys. I apologize. Permitting in Massachusetts, permits, are down almost 50% from the time Charlie Baker was in office. This is not a direct reflection on Maura Healey per se. Charlie Baker is the one that initiated all of these green mandates, and Maura Healey is the one that basically carried that torch forward. My problem, and the reason that I want to talk about this and I want to tie this in, is because we see two things happening right now in Massachusetts. One is rent control. Number two is more affordable housing. Both of these things on paper could sound good. And I'm not going to make this a video about rent control or affordable housing. But what rent control and affordable housing do is they make the market for everybody more expensive, which inevitably makes it more expensive down the line for them as well. That's what ends up happening because the builders, the developers, the landlords need a way to figure out how to recuperate those costs, right? So either in a rent control, the building just absolutely, it gets debilitated basically. And in terms of building, when you have 20% affordable units in a 100-unit apartment complex or condo complex, guess what happens? The market rate units end up offsetting the cost that the builder is losing on the affordable units. So first, let me show you one of the quotes that I'm talking about here. This is the Passive House Standard. This was part of the stretch codes. Now, please don't blow up the companies I'm about to show you. They are just doing their job, and this was mandated by our state government. Okay, if you want to be mad at anybody, be mad at our state government. That's the honest to God truth. So in order to, let's say, pass, right? We'll just use this as a blanket term. In order to pass your unit for these stretch codes and stuff like that, this is for a 20-unit building in East Boston, 20 units. I'm going to show you what the cost is. Okay. I'm going to scroll down here. And here we have something called their standard billing milestones. It's $155, almost $155,000. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. To add context to this, here's why it's a lot of money. The cost of an architect, architectural engineering, architectural plans, permitting for this exact unit was roughly, I think, around $350,000, maybe $400,000. This cost here for a damn report is almost half or more than a third of the cost of all of that other stuff I just talked about. You see where I'm going with this? It's on top of all of the other stuff. And not only is it on top of it, it's literally a third, less than half, and more than a third of the cost of the permitting, architectural. It's insane. Now, you need to remember, when you have investment firms that loan you money to build these projects, they are not getting, you're not satisfying those loans or that money that they're lending you until the project is built and sold. So if this takes 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, they, meaning the investment groups, like to retain anywhere between 15 to 20%. Let's be fair. And let's say it's 10%, which we know it's not. 10% over the course of multiple years, compounding, on top of what you are spending. Okay, so that's an additional $155,000 on top of the project. Now, to put more things into perspective, you might be wondering what stretch codes actually do. All right, what they make you do is they make your place airtight. So the type of windows that you use, the type of doors that you use, the type of insulation that you use, the type of probably the roofing material, or maybe even the studs that you use, they make it significantly more cost ineffective than effective to actually build. Now, you might be wondering, how much additional cost does it add on top of what we were already paying? There was an MIT report from a professor there maybe about a year ago that said it adds an additional 4 to 5%. 4 to 5% is a lot of money. But that same developer talked to his other developer friends, and they've calculated this out. And I know I don't like giving anecdotal experience, but most of them are quoting between 15 to 16%. So it's costing them, let's just say 15. Actually, let's be fair. Let's split the difference a little bit. Let's say it's 10% more. The same product back in 2022 is now 10% more expensive because of reports like this, and because of the material that has to be used in order to pass on these reports. Now, you have to understand what happens here in the housing market. I'm a real estate agent, okay? I still sell real estate here in Massachusetts. Here's what happens. When you have a subject property, right, that gets built, and it's either 10 or 15% more expensive than it was, let's say, back in 2022, what ends up happening is that specific subject property, whether it be a multifamily home, a condo complex, a single family home, whatever it is, once that building closes at 10% more than what it used to be, that's only going to be used as a comparable for future buildings. You see where I'm going with this? So there's a trickle down cost that ends up happening. All right. So I'll just say this and then I'll talk more about this. Here's the problem. Here's why I have a huge problem with this. The same people that want the rent control and the same people that want affordable housing are the ones that want these green initiatives inside of Massachusetts. So basically, they lit the housing market on fire, and now they are selling you the fire extinguisher. That's what's going on here. They lit the housing market on fire, and they are selling you the fire extinguisher. The fire extinguisher could be rent control. The fire extinguisher could be affordable housing. Do you see where I'm going with this? These are the same exact people. They're an invasive species, these people. They suck, okay? They absolutely suck. Now, you could go on and say, well, if the cost is recoverable and all of these other things, whatever it may be, you have a point, okay? But here's the problem. Most people, especially first-time home buyers, do not see or won't see the savings. They won't see the savings because the cost of the buy to sell ratio is roughly about 7 years. It may take you 20 plus years before you see a dollar of that 10% increase back. That's what happens. You're not going to see it. Somebody will see it down the line, but it certainly is not going to be you. So you got to think to yourself, is this worth it? And in my opinion, it is absolutely not worth it. You can't make the cost of construction 10% to 15% or 16% more and expect it not to infect the rest of the housing market, because when you go down the chain, like I said, it only makes the cost to build more expensive, right? That's the way that it goes. So truly, I don't know if anybody has actually quantified this in this way, but I don't think there's an actual savings at all. There may be a savings for the first people that got into, a bot in the beginning, but then down the line, as things become more and more and more and more expensive and less and less and less inventory is coming onto the market, meaning the prices are getting higher because demand gets higher, and the sale price or the list to sale price ratio, meaning that what a house was listed at versus what it closes at, is higher. People are paying more for the same product because there's less supply. Does that make sense? Now, if you don't believe me, I will show you another bid. 1 second. Here is another bid. Now, this came from Energy Credit Consulting. These people are getting absolutely rich off this program, by the way. Okay? Let me scroll down for you, and I will show you where is it at. the price on this one. This was for the same project. This was $120,000, okay? Because it had a $5,000 discount, 120. So we have a bid for 120 and we have a bid for 155. This is an additional expense added on to the cost of the action, not even the construction, but like part of the permitting process, so on and so forth. Now, I don't know if I talked about this already, but I will. The builder ends up getting a rebate back. So per this $155,000 bid, the rebate, is this the rebate here? Available incentives following passive house tier-based 20 units. So I think I think the incentives, I think it may be a rebate, and I think this is close. So $85,000. So I was quoted about $80,000 to $90,000 in terms of rebates, which means if the builder builds this like ultra green project, right, or ultra green condo units, they end up getting a rebate back. Now, you might be wondering, where the hell does that money come from? Let me show you. It's coming from Mass Save, which we are paying for. The ratepayers in Massachusetts are funding the rebate back to the developer, okay? And it is calculated on your bill, and the mechanism in place is the energy efficiency charge. This appears on every single bill. So your energy efficiency charge is pooling money inside of this is why Mass Save grew to the amount that it grew to, one of the reasons. So that money is getting pooled back into Mass Save and then is being redistributed back to the developers as a credit to make their projects ultra green. That is what is going on here. So this is by proxy making your electric bills also more expensive. Not that I'm going to go down that rabbit hole here, but it is one of the reasons why your housing is your electric bills are more expensive. And on top of that, the reason your houses and projects and everything is more expensive as well. Now, here is this is the Massachusetts housing market overview from Redfin. If I go back to 2022, here's January of 2022. We were sitting around maybe $490,000 for a house. Now, I know January is at the lowest point. Obviously, up here in June and July, it's going to be higher. There was still, remember now, rates were still low back at this time, okay? The housing has gone up year to year by 2.6%. Over the course of this graph, housing as it currently stands in April of 2026 is over $650,000. In April of 2022, we were talking about maybe $520,000. So it's $120,000 more to build or to buy a house now than it was, let's say, just 4 years ago. That's what's going on here. This is why it is so inefficient to build. It is so inefficient to finance. And on top of that, it's so very expensive to buy. Now, let's head down a little bit. Housing supply. Housing supply, what is happening here is that housing supply is slowly creeping up. It is slowly creeping up. If you look between, let's say, 23 all the way to 26, housing supply is still creeping up, but it's not creeping up because of the amount of units that are being built. The amount of units, as I said earlier, that are being built, I'll just show you this down here. So permits, right? Statewide, inside of Massachusetts, here it is, all right? So Healey claims that she's either built or permitted 100,000 homes since she took office, which is true. But the majority of those homes were Charlie Bakers. They were Charlie Bakers. 63,000 units specifically were Charlie Bakers because they were already permitted or the construction was already started. Do you see what I'm saying? So it says here, and this is all data from the MLS. I'm not going to go and show you how I pulled all the data. Just this is what it is. Most completed units, 63,100 were permitted in between 2020 to 2022 under Governor Baker. Construction takes 2 to 3 years. New permits issued after Healey took office and onward was only 28,500. Comparison is Baker permitted over 54,000. Okay, so Healey's rate is less than half. So you might be wondering, well, how do we have more housing? The reason that we have more housing is not because more houses are being built. The reason we have more housing is because more people, the demand, while the demand is still here, and I'll show you that next, the demand for houses is going down because of how expensive they actually are. But the demand is still relevant. I'm going to show you that next. This is homes sold. It's getting better, but this is the truth. This is how competitive the housing market is. Homes sold above the list price, okay? Look back in 21. We were at around 60, hovering around 60, almost up to 70%. That means 70% of the homes that we're selling, 2/3 of the homes that we're selling, 3 out of every 4 homes that we're selling above the list price. Now we are in a position where it's about 41.7%, and there was a negative 7.2 drop off since April of since last year over year. Okay, so back in April of 25, it was hovering almost to 50. Now we are around maybe 42-ish% or something, which gives you that negative 7.2. This is good for the home buyer because that means that, almost for every other home that you bid, it's going to sell, let's say, above the list price, right? Or you could reverse engineer that and say maybe below the list price as well, right? So that's what's happening. So when you look at all of these things and you put all these things together, you have to realize that, A, not only is it more expensive to build, it's more expensive to buy, which ends up making it inevitably more expensive for future units. That's number one. Number two, it's more expensive to buy. Number three, lending institutions and institutional investors do not want to invest in Massachusetts because their rate of return sucks. It sucks. Their money is better spent in the housing market. So if we have less investment coming into the state, if we have less building going on in the state, which, as I just showed you, the permitting is down, and on top of that, there's houses sitting on the market, right? What ends up happening is it creates this diabolical loop that ends up continuing and continuing and continuing throughout Massachusetts. That's what's happening. Now, you could say, well, over a period of time, it'll become so expensive and the demand will keep dropping that prices will inevitably come down. That's not the best way to look at these things. You can't look at it this way. You're making housing unaffordable for the buyer, more expensive for the developer to build, and lending institutions not wanting to invest money. You may have a period of time, a lull, where maybe prices do come down because the demand and the prices got so high that the demand just shrunk, okay? But if you continue to have that, you're going to have the prices continue to go up while the investors are pulling out because less supply will inevitably equal more demand. So there may be like a catch-up period of time that happens. So here's how it actually went down. Let me scroll up here. This is what happened. Back in December of 22, this was Governor Charlie Baker's last great gift to Massachusetts. So in December 22, this is when Charlie Baker's Department of Energy Resources, they finalized a specialized opt-in stretch energy code, which requires passive house certification for all new multifamily buildings over 12,000 square foot. That's part of the problem, okay? Then Maura Healey is sworn in as governor, right? Over 56 municipalities, including Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, and Worcester, adopted the specialized code. Now, more west of Massachusetts, I don't think you guys are experiencing this to the same level, in my opinion. You may see a lot of demand because people are getting priced out here. So by proxy, you have artificial appreciation inside of those markets, meaning that people that would not have previously thought about buying in Western Massachusetts are. But it's artificial because, if things come back down or things get significantly less expensive to buy, the other buyers that would have created demand are just buying the housing markets that they were initially intending to look at, right? Now, I already showed you Healey's claim, the 100,000 homes. It's not true, okay? Now, the impact, and I talked about this obviously a little bit too, $120,000 to $150,000 in mandatory third-party consulting soft costs per typical 20-unit project, and an additional $400,000 to $500,000 in hard costs, right? So that means windows, insulation, different HVAC systems. And then again, you're getting back or the builder, I should say, the developer is getting back about 90 grand from the rebates that we're paying for through the Mass Save. This is, again, it's a loop that we are paying for through the Mass Save program. That is what's going on here. And inevitably, what ends up happening is permitting will continue to be down. You could say you want to build X, Y, or Z. Saying it and doing it is two completely different things. Like, the proof is in the numbers, right? The proof is in the numbers. That's what people need to understand. If permitting is down, that means that there's going to be less inventory coming to the market. With less inventory coming to the market, if prices continue to rise, you have two forces competing with each other, really. You have buyers that are getting priced out of the market and they're leaving, as per this chart here, where we've had billions of dollars leave the state, right? This is a huge problem that needs to be corrected, okay? It needs to be corrected. So you have a rock and a hard place. The buyers are stuck leaving because they can't afford a house here, which inevitably will drive down the demand, right? Then you have builders that can't build, which inevitably drives up the cost, right? So like I said, there may be a period where there's a lull, but then what'll happen is over a period of time of not building, right? Really, you could look at this from two different ways. If there's a continued period of not building and the cost to permit and develop these projects is at an all-time low, it's at record lows, then perhaps the housing market could either rebound where housing prices become more affordable, because guess what? The demand is also going down because the prices keep going up. But it could also go the other way. Absolutely nobody knows. The way that it's looking now is that most properties are still selling above the list price. So I'll go back up here. And remember, this is median data. So for those of you that don't know the difference between a median and average, median is a better representation. And remember, this number is all of Massachusetts. Median is a better representation of where the bulk of the sales are. So what I mean by that is it's not taking the average, which is the highest high and the lowest low. It's taking the median, which is where the bulk of the sales are. In my opinion, it's a better direct representation of what you may be paying inside of Massachusetts. Again, this is Massachusetts as a whole. This is not Eastern Massachusetts around Boston. We know it's going to be more costly to buy around here. So median is a better representation of data. When you look at and the chart that I showed you earlier was all types of homes. What we have a problem with in Massachusetts is single family homes. That's why it's almost up 5% year over year. Again, okay? Townhouses is 2.7, and where's condos and co-ops? Okay, there's no multifamilies on here. Condos and co-ops is 1.7%. So single family homes is the biggest problem. This doesn't have multifamily ironed out here unless they're considering townhouses multifamily, but I doubt it. There is a lack of multifamily homes too. The reason there's a lack of multifamily homes is because you have people that want to buy a single family home that choose that as an option to make one of the multiple units their primary and then rent out the other units to sustain some type of rent to help pay their mortgage. You have primary buyers looking for those. You also have investors that want to flip these properties and condo them out and turn them into condos. And then you also have career landlords that just want to buy it as is, not do anything, and maintain the tenants there. So you guys, if you're a home buyer looking for a multifamily home, you're effectively bidding against three other people. Other people that want to buy a multifamily home and use it as a primary, investors that want to flip the property into condos, and third of all, institutional landlords that just want to buy it and scoop up the rent. So that's who you're bidding against. So single family homes and multifamily homes are part of the biggest problem. Now, number of homes sold. Here's another one. Look at this. The number of homes sold is going down. This is hard to quantify because it could be a combination of less homes being permitted, which means less homes are being built, number one. And number two, there are less buyers in the market because they are all leaving Massachusetts. So less homes are actually selling. It could be a combination of the two. Let me go down a little bit here. Massachusetts housing. Was this all types of homes? Yes. Okay. And here, I'll just show you this. The biggest contributor to that number is single family homes. Single family homes, because they are so expensive and they're also not being built. That is the problem here, okay? Let's scroll down a little bit more. Number of homes for sale. Obviously, we know that went up. Even single-family homes went up. But we're roughly hovering around the amount of homes for sale as April of 2021. Then it dipped because rates went down a lot, and now it's starting to creep back up. That's what's going on here. Newly listed homes. So here's a direct representation. Let's do all of the market. This is a direct representation of homes that are coming on the market. So less people are putting their homes on the market in comparison to 2022. They're just not, it's creeping up slightly since, let's say, 24 and 25. It's actually right around where it was in 25. So it is, people are just not selling their home. The reason they're not selling their home is because most sellers, and you could look at the data in regards to this, most sellers are looking for a rate that is 4 or below. Most buyers don't care what the rate is, okay? Most buyers, they care what the rate is, but if they're pressed to either rent or buy a home in Massachusetts, they usually opt to buy a home if they decide to stay here. So the fact remains, less inventory of resales are coming on the market across the board, right? And it's even worse so for single-family homes. That's what's going on here. All right, let's keep taking a look here. Homes with price drops. Let's take a look at this. All homes. So again, only 16% of the housing market is, that's over a year. Yeah, only 16.7% of the housing market is seeing home prices drop. But of course, this encompasses all of these. If you go to single family homes, it's roughly about the same, and it actually got a little bit worse. So that means that less homes are selling after a price reduction, if that makes sense. This is why housing is so expensive in Massachusetts. And here's exactly what I was talking about. I didn't even know this was in here. This is the sale to list price ratios. So over the course of 5 years, right, the sale to list price ratio is most homes are selling for at least at the list price. That's what this means. That's what this means. So if you list a house, you'll almost be guaranteed to sell it for what you put it on the market for. This is, of course, encompassing sales that happened at the list price, sales that happened above the list price, and sales that happened below. So what that means is you could have had one home that sold for 100% of the list price. If it was $1 million, it sold for $1 million. Then you could have another $1 million home that sold for 10% under that. And then you could have another $1 million home that sold for 10% above that. That's where you get this near 100% number. Does that make sense? So in reality, there needs to be something done inside of Massachusetts when it comes to housing. People are leaving the state. Billions of dollars are leaving the state, not only in residence, but investment. Investment is not coming here because it doesn't make sense to invest when you are making it so hard to build, right? Forget the money portion of those different bids that I showed you. Think about the time that it takes and the more roadblocks that are getting put in the way. So while Healey says, oh, we want to cut red tape, we want to do this, you're not cutting anything. You implemented, or at least carried the torch of Charlie Baker and made it significantly more expensive to build the same exact product than it cost just 3 to 4 years ago. That's the truth. That's the honest to God truth. That's what's going on here. And not only is this happening, but on the back end, us, the ratepayers, electricity, gas, we are the ones paying for the rebate back for these programs. The reason that they probably adopted a rebate for these programs is because they knew that builders and developers were going to look at this and they're going to say, holy shit, this is half of the cost of the architectural plans and the engineering and the permitting and all this other stuff. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. I want to dig a little, again, it's no offense to the companies. I don't understand how a report could be $150,000. It doesn't make any sense to me. Is there that much work that goes into these reports that it's $150,000? It seems outrageous to me. So you can't simultaneously build less housing and not expect people to leave. You can't make it more cost ineffective to build the same housing as it cost back in 2022 as it does today, and then try to put a Band-Aid on the problem because rents are too high, because we need more affordable housing. I don't know if I said this because this is a long damn video, as I may have said earlier, whenever you implement more, and I'm not against affordable housing, okay? I'm not against it to a point, okay? Affordable housing creates the dynamic where the rest of the market value rate units are going up in price. So what inevitably happens there is the same thing of when it makes it more cost ineffective to build. That means other market value units that are going to be sold are going to have an inflated price because of the offset on the original building for the amount of affordable units. Does that make sense? There's lenders that don't even want to lend on these projects because the rate of return is absolutely terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And the more affordable housing you add to these units, the less the rate of return that the investment company is getting on top of the increase in prices for the fair market value units, which inevitably become comparables for the next project. This is why I'm saying this is a diabolical doom loop. There's no correcting this unless you make it more cost effective to actually build. Now, here's a prediction. What I think is going to happen is, and she said this before, Maura Healey is more than likely and I'm not saying the tariffs are not part of the problem and not part of the equation, because they absolutely are. But the fact remains, it's a portion of the problem that's outside of her control. She needs to focus on things that are within her control. This is within her control. So she's going to probably campaign on how things have become more expensive because of tariffs. And that's why I think more news outlets, I'm in hopes that a couple news outlets will see this video and they'll start digging deeper into this, because I think I'm the only one that's really covering this at this granular of a level. And you could really take any of my talking points and really even dig deeper and go into the weeds of why this is happening. This is, even though we did dig a little bit, it's more of an overview of what is happening. But I will guarantee you that she will blame the lack of permitting on Trump. Okay, that's what's going to happen. And I'm not saying that he did not cause some of the issues when it comes to making things more expensive in order to build, because if we're getting steel from Canada or wood from wherever, right? Like, of course, it's going to be more expensive, but it's outside of our control. So re-electing Governor Healey to campaign on the fact that Trump is making everything more expensive without a solution to actually make it more cost effective to build in your own state is a moot point, because she has all of the direct control of DOER, and she could strip out these, and I'm not saying that she's going to, but she could strip out all of these green mandates and not only make it more cost effective to build the same exact product, but also strip it out of our utility bills and make our utility bills lower. You could kind of kill two birds with one stone here. At least you could eliminate that mass save surcharge inside of your bill to a point. So in theory, you would save some money. It's not going to be a dramatic amount of money, but it is some money. So again, this whole entire thing is like a hamster on a wheel, and things are not going to, like, as I said earlier, nobody could predict this. Things may get less expensive down the line when there's that lull, but then as more development and more investment doesn't come into the state, guess what's going to happen? You have to hope that more people, you're screwed either way, because it's either more people are going to leave, which is going to create less demand, okay? Which is what I showed in the chart. The demand is going down, okay? Places are still selling at list price or more, but the demand is going down because people are leaving. That's why the demand is going down. On top of the fact that there's also less inventory available to buy because it's not being built. So it's either we stay the course, right? And we let more people leave the state, which means billions of dollars of revenue from taxpayers leaving the state, or the other flip side of that coin is that we don't know whether or not it's going to be either prices are going to go down or prices are going to go up. If you want prices to go down, look at it this way. This is a better point. If you want prices to go down in Massachusetts, you need to eliminate the demand. Well, how do you eliminate the demand? You build less houses, right? And the less houses you build will inevitably make the market more expensive. So then people leave. But if people leave, the state is losing revenue. The state is losing tax dollars. So it's an absolute lose-lose situation, no matter what way you try to look at it. And on the flip side of things, we would need to engulf the market with more inventory and make it more cost effective and quicker to build the same product. You can't only make it more cost effective, you also have to make it quicker to build, because making it more cost effective, yes, you could sell places maybe at a cheaper cost, right? But without the ability to create more supply than demand, you still have a problem. So you simultaneously not only need people coming into this state, okay, to generate revenue on that side for the state itself and for our budget, but you also need the supply to come up in the terms of A, making it more cost effective to build the same product as it was in 2022, and B, build even more product than we were seeing back in 2022 by cutting the red tape and cutting the regulations, which this is obviously some level of red tape, but you need to do it quicker. You can't just have houses coming on the market every 3 years, right? Because it's just not enough to flood the market with more inventory so prices could stabilize. The only way prices are going to stabilize is if the demand meets the supply, and that's it. That's all that it takes. So hoping prices go down, as I said, is a tricky situation. Hoping prices goes down means that more people are leaving. Does that make sense? So it's the same people, as I said, that want all this green stuff. And don't get me wrong. Like I don't think that I want a safe and clean environment too, but not at the expense of what we're seeing. And that expense is people leaving. That expense is businesses leaving. That expense is investors not wanting to invest in real estate or probably business inside of the state. That's why we've seen so many businesses close. So there needs to be a happy medium here. There needs to be something done. And I'm going to keep talking about this until something gets done, because ultimately, we're going to continue to have the same problem. It's going to happen across the board. And the same exact people, and I'll do a video on rent control in the future. If you want a video about affordable housing in the future, I could do that too. It's the same exact parasites that want these green stretch codes and, carbon neutral or net zero carbon, whatever the hell it is. It's those same people that are crying about the cost of rent. It's those same people that are crying because there's not enough affordable housing. It's those same people that are crying about the cost of housing. But you, as one of those people that are crying, help enabled what just happened inside of Massachusetts. These people are so completely unaware. They have no self-awareness of the causes and the future repercussions of their actions, okay? I'm not saying it's only them, but I am saying that they are also part of the problem because, again, they lit the housing market on fire and now they're using extinguishers to put it out. And the extinguishers, as I said earlier, affordable housing and rent control. And this cycle will just keep on going and we will continue to have people leaving and less investment businesses coming to Massachusetts, or more importantly, the ones even that could stay here. They're leaving. The only ones that are staying are more than likely, and maybe some of you know better of this than me, the ones that are staying are probably being incentivized by the state or by the governor, meaning that they're getting some kind of incentives to stay. That's what's happening. That is the reality of the business climate, the real estate climate inside of Massachusetts. That is what is happening, and somebody needs to solve the problem. They need to solve the problem yesterday, okay? We can't have multiple more years of this. And if Mari Healey stays in office, I will guarantee you that we will have multiple more years of this. Do not believe what she says with the permits and the housing. It's true, right? On paper, but in practice, it's not. It is 100% fabricated because, as I said earlier, Charlie Baker is responsible for most of those prior to the stretch codes. That's why permits are down, guys. So if anybody, if somebody wants to cover this in detail and needs more information or data or whatever it may be, if you're an independent journalist, if you're a mainstream media, I don't care who it is, somebody needs to look at this realistically and solve this problem, because now one problem has created two simultaneous other problems on the side, which is the rent control and increasing affordable housing. Rent control is a big one, okay? Rent control is a big one. So please, guys, I know this might be a boring topic for some people. I don't expect everybody to watch like an almost hour-long video. Maybe I'll even chapter this out a little bit if I can. But ultimately, more people need to be talking about this. They need to talk about what is happening inside of Massachusetts as a case study so other states don't do this, because it's crazy. It really is. The writing is on the wall. You see it happening, and nobody wants to address it directly. That's why I want to talk about these issues. That's why I talk about these issues in the way that I do. And that's it. I just hope people could have an honest conversation about what is truly happening in regards to real estate. So anyway, by the way, if some people, sometimes I'll get a phone call and people will say, oh, Mike, I know you still sell real estate. Don't be scared to call me. Okay. I will help you. Even if you're outside of Massachusetts, I think we have over 200 agents now throughout 6 states, but we have 90,000 agents within our organization. So, it's a little bit of self-promotion, but I just want people to understand here that even though I'm on YouTube, I am a normal person, okay? I still sell real estate. That is my day job. And if you're looking to sell, buy, no matter where it is in Massachusetts, even if it's an area outside that I normally cover, I cover normally Eastern Massachusetts. Even if it's Western Massachusetts, I could get you a referral partner. If it's Connecticut, Rhode Island, no matter where it is in the country, I could get you a referral partner. That's another, top producing high volume agent to set you up with. So don't be scared to call me, guys. I still do this, okay? I just wanted to iron that out because it seems every single time somebody calls me, they're shocked that I answer the phone or I answer the real estate questions if they have any. Anyway, that's it. I'll see you on the next one, guys. Bye-bye.